You'll find out soon why I had that reaction at the beginning of this. Has to do with two.
Many reasons.
What's going on with you guys? Hi, happy Wednesday. It's Wednesday, January 13th. We're just plowing through the month here. Yeah, we're I think with today we're not quite
almost halfway.
We're not halfway through. Yeah, by Friday we'll be halfway through. But hello guys, Amy and Samir here, Book Club for Movies. How is everyone's Wednesday doing?
Well, Crystal clearly affected by that. She says that movie, man.
Yeah, so we will be starting. We'll be talking about yesterday's film, which was the incredibly dark We Need to Talk About Kevin. Yesterday we talked about director Lynn Ramsey. We were joined by one of our avid viewers, Mr. Andres Gallego. We had a lot of fun talking with him, and then the three of us ended up talking for like an hour and a half after.
Yes. Movie people.
Yes, he told us some behind-the-scenes stories that weren't fit for the public airways. Yeah, he's really fun, and we hope that we could have him join us again. But once we're done talking about We Need to Talk About Kevin, we will be talking about our next subject, our Woman Crush Wednesday pick, Jeanette MacDonald, and one of Samir's all-time favorite films, The Merry Widow. But let's go ahead and dive into We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Ironically, another one of my all-time favorite films.
Which shows how much range you have in your favorites. You really don't have a type, Samir.
I really don't.
Your type is just good films.
Well, except big dicks. They're a type, right? No. Just kidding. But no, not. But yes, no. It's bizarre that like this movie is filled with like some of my all-time favorite movies, and it's like We Need to Talk About Kevin, Tremors, Merry Widow. Yeah, it's a nice sampling of my insanity. But this movie is so freaking brilliant. It
is
from first moment to last, and you know, like I said, essential filmmaking. You know, like that first shot of the curtains. That's not a throwaway shot.
Nope.
That is. You realize as you go through the movie, you're like, oh, we're living in the mind of someone who's constantly reliving that day, constantly reconstructing all the events of her life with this child, as if trying to figure out where did I go wrong. And she's like living this repetitive cycle in her modern day life. So you get confused about the timelines. And it's like, this is how horrifying it is to be inside the mind of the mother of a child who commits an atrocity like that, but has not radicalized her child to be like that. You know, like some of these other cases that we've heard of, like school shootings, it's like the people, there's an element of that life. You're like, oh, well, that's why, of course, the mother raised them to do this, or the dad did this. And you know, but there's none of that here. It's really just maybe a mom who wasn't ready to be a mom and then had postpartum depression, and nobody gave a shit about any of those things. It's so infuriating, but there's also the element of like, could anything they have done ever really completely contained this child's evil? Because I think there was some major evil there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we talked about this after our talk yesterday, but we were talking again about the nature versus nurture thing. And I do think it can kind of be both, but I think mostly nature because
mostly bad seed.
Yes, and it's interesting too because as he becomes a teenager, it's like you think that like, okay, now he's just kind of like a moody teenager, and then he'll do some things and you're like, oh yeah, he's still psychotic.
Yeah, I mean, like he poisoned his sister.
And he
tried to kill his sister once already.
Down the garbage disposal.
Like, just like there's so many elements of it's like, you know, some of this is like, okay, this child is crying out for help. And I'm like, at what point you're like, okay, you know, we see in the movie he's already graduated to torturing animals when you realize he shoved his little sister's, you know, gerbil into the garbage disposal and clogged it. So there's like there's those elements, but then it's just kind of exacerbated. Because by what Crystal's saying, she's like, you know, I recognize when a parent doesn't provide ego support or positive reinforcement. And I felt like
Yeah,
a lot
more
of this is
nurture
why I hate
side.
the dad, is because the dad is so oblivious. Like, even as the child's a baby, you see this child like actively antagonistic.
Mhm.
Even as an infant, in some ways, you kind of get that, like, it's very ambiguous. Like, you can go both ways with everything. And it's really just how you perceive the story that leads you down one path or the other. And the movie is made intentionally that way, so you don't have something that can make you feel comfortable. Like, oh, I know exactly why all of these things happen. I know exactly why. And now I feel better because I know that there's an explanation for this. And it's like, well, you can't, it doesn't give you that. It doesn't give you that satisfaction. It tries to be as real as possible. In some of these situations, you don't have that answer. But I do think that some of the things that the kid does is beyond just being denied positive reinforcement. I'm like, he's violent. He's
Yeah.
actually violent against people. When usually that's a sign of a
Manipulative.
serial killer. If once you start torturing animals, you are on the path to serial killer. Yes, exactly. He was wicked smart. That was the thing. He saved some of his bowel movement for right after she changed him. He knew that it's just like so
Yeah,
upsetting to
that's
see
one of the
how smart
horrifying
and
scenes.
psychotic this kid is, and that he could use that scar like a button to
Mhm.
like get anything he wanted out of her. And then there's the dad who's just completely does not help at all. Like, I got so pissed when she's like, no, because every mother knows that feeling. Like, I just got the baby. I just put the baby down.
And he's like, "It's
Like,
fine."
and he's like, oh, he's just fine. See, he's fine. You just got to rock him a little. You just got to rock him a little. I'm like, you
That is
fucking
a
asshole.
surprisingly decent John C. Reilly impression just off the cuff.
I'm a good mimic. But I love that John C. Reilly wanted to be in a Lynn Ramsey movie. He's such a film literate actor.
He's awesome.
He's
You do
like,
it.
oh, I loved Ratcatcher. I loved Morgan Keller. And I literally asked my agent, what's going on with Lynn Ramsey? Is she working on anything? I want to be in a movie of hers. Like, he admired her as a director so much, he sought her out. And then he turned out to be the perfect actor for this role, because in the book, this role is kind of like a more studly guy. But she made him like a real person, and you totally buy him. It's like every dad is like that. They do not know what the fuck's going on with the mom and how much work she put in to get that baby to sleep so she could rest. Her standing by the jackhammer and the look of relief on her face tells you how exhausting it is to be a mom. And the movie kind of, the director and everybody who made it all confirmed this in the interviews. This movie is almost like Rosemary's Baby after the baby is born and you're raising the child. And because that Rosemary's Baby, the horror of that movie is sort of built around all the anxieties of like, I've never been pregnant before. I've never been a mom before. Am I doing the right thing? Is this going to have a bad effect on the baby? Like all of those anxieties that come with it are like sort of the gateway for the cult to, infiltrate and do what they want to do. Because everything can sort of be written off as part of that anxiety, even if she thinks that something may really be wrong. And now you've got the same thing where it's like the mom is like, I feel like something's wrong. And everyone's telling her it's fine. He's just a boy. Boys do this. It's no problem. Like, she's being gaslighted by everybody when she's trying to point out the red flags. So it's like perfect storm to create this psychopath child.
Yeah, I like that Crystal has this side of it where, correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal, but you definitely seem to be more on the nurture side, which is cool that this is kind of what we want when we have these after the movie discussions.
Yeah.
We want to hear people's opinions, and debate these films.
That part I also related to, but the hard thing is for me is that having seen the movie all the way through, and I was like, every time you think that this kid is like, oh, he's showing his vulnerability, he's opening up, it's always a manipulative ploy to get something long range. And you realize he's been holding that Robin Hood book, the only book on his shelf, for years. Even as a teenager, he's still holding on to it. So it's like, so there's this element where you're like, oh, that is a perfect opportunity for the mom to say, no, I love you, but he's been literally like torturing her up to that point. So she can't say what he needs to hear in that moment. So it's just like a tragedy in that way. but just like when that one woman takes a sock at her in the beginning of the movie, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, and I mean, just the plot itself raises so many questions of just like, does this mother really deserve this? I mean, how many, school shooting incidents have there been? And, like, if it was me, like, I mean, unless it was something of like, oh, like, I mean, of course, it's interesting in this case because he wasn't using a gun, but it's like, unless that parent was like, I'm going to buy this kid a gun, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to completely blame the parent for some of this because I don't know, that's another interesting debate topic. It's like, she's getting so much hatred, from this town, and whether it's like deserved or not is another thing to talk about in that
And she
situation.
lost her husband and daughter as well.
Mhm.
And what did the husband and daughter do? What did the daughter do wrong with this kid?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what did she do to him to deserve being murdered? What did the dad do to deserve being murdered? Like, if anything, the dad was more supportive and loving constantly of this kid, but the kid just used that as another manipulative tool. He didn't actually have any emotion for his dad, and he proved it when he put an arrow through his arrows. He had 2 arrows. His
One
dad,
of
when
my
you look at that,
favorite shots is when Tilda Swinton realizes that the guinea pig is in the garbage disposal, and she looks at Urza Miller outside playing tetherball with John C. Reilly, and he's looking at her and gives her like this kind of death stare that he does, and then he turns immediately back to his dad and is like we're having fun playing tetherball, and right
and
there
he did that as a kid too, when he like smashed the bread with jelly onto the table, and he just glares at her. He doesn't even say anything. He just sits there and glares at her. And then as soon as the dad comes in, hi, Daddy, how was work? And then she starts doing it. She catches herself and she's like,
yeah. And
what have I become?
Another thing I really liked about this, just to kind of get away from the plot, which, we could talk about that all day. For being such a brutal film, as far as the subject matter goes, visually, this really wasn't that gory. I mean, I think the worst shot was towards the end and seeing John C. Reilly and the daughter just like laying there dead. But everything else, it's like you're not actually seeing arrows enter bodies. You're not seeing, this guinea pig being lowered into a garbage disposal.
You're not seeing the gore spew out.
Yeah. And believe me, I love gory films.
Yeah, but I appreciated that, I guess.
About that, or refreshing of just like this. That's not the only option with dealing with this brutal subject matter.
And that's not the only horrifying thing of this part of the subject matter. Crystal brings up a good point. She says, like, when the son flicks water at the newborn baby, they don't correct the behavior. But here's the thing, is that the mother does try to correct the behavior, and the father just takes his son out of the room. So let's go get a soda. Clearly the father doesn't correct the kid either in that moment, but she's like, no, Kevin, don't do that. That's not, like, she starts to say something to him, and then the father takes the kid away. So he's like literally removing him from that situation as well. I do think that the dad's obliviousness is infuriating still. Upon this rewatch, it was just as infuriating, especially when she gets pregnant a second time. And he gets pissed at her. And it's like, oh, so now that whenever she wants to maintain control over her own reproductive rights and her body, you are upset. So basically, she had a baby with you because you wanted to have a family. Because they show that sex scene and he like doesn't put on a condom. And he's like, let's just see what happens. Because he wanted a baby. So he's kind of manipulating her in that moment because he wants a child. And she's just going along with it because she's so happy with him. And then they have a baby, and he's like, oh, first it's like, nothing's going to change. We're just going to have a baby. We're going to be a family. And then it's like, we really shouldn't live here. It's not good for him. The elevator's dangerous. We should go to the suburbs and all of this stuff, And so she's going along with all these things that he wants. They buy this huge house that she doesn't want out in the suburbs, which doesn't want to live. She's put her career on hold, which she didn't want to do, to have this child, which she didn't actually choose to have. It was his decision. And then when she is ready to make her own choice to have a baby and she gets pregnant, she doesn't tell him right away. He's like, when are you going to tell me? I don't even get to be a part of this, to say, like, all that typical male crap. Like, and I'm like, what did you buy this enormous house for? Isn't
Yeah.
the whole point of this house for you to have a family, to have your suburban castle? This is your fantasy. And then the second that she adds something to it, it's like, oh, she's now an enemy in his eyes and she has to make up to him. And I'm like,
Yeah,
mm-mm,
and I really like it.
mm-mm.
And hello, Andres. You can see that we were having quite a spirited discussion. Yeah, but for this, like I mentioned yesterday, this is something like I'm not really a big kid baby person. If I have kids, I want to adopt for multiple reasons. Um, just overpopulation, and I don't know, a lot of kids in the foster system and all of that. But this, as I mentioned yesterday, this is something where it's like if I had my own child that I gave birth to, and this is how that kid turned out, I would just be like, I don't know what I would do.
Well, the author who wrote the book also said like that she wrote this book because she was like, oh, I've been like thinking like, I feel like I should have a baby by now. Like I want to be a parent. I don't. So she's like going through her own feelings about it. And then she thought about this concept of like somebody whose lived experience of being pregnant, having a baby doesn't match the fantasy that every woman is told they're supposed to experience when they're supposed to feel this, and you're supposed to be totally won over by this life growing inside you. And this, and it's like you're taught that is what you feel when you get pregnant. Doesn't matter what else is going on in your life. If you don't have these feelings, then you're not a good mom. You're not a good woman. You're not, there's all these judgments put on a woman for not feeling those things right away, but not every woman feels those things, So there's a lot of judgment, I think, placed on this mom in a way that to me feels kind of unfair, and in some ways is very fair because she does totally lose it and abuse her child in one moment. So there's like I said, the movie is brilliant because it doesn't give you any easy answers with a topic that everybody wants easy answers to and thinks that there is an easy answer to, and there really isn't. And there's no other movie that I think really explored the mindset of the person in this position before. And it really, because it didn't give you those easy answers, because it was complex and upsetting, and so polarizing in some ways in terms of how you interpret it, I think that's why it didn't get the awards recognition. I think people just did not want to feel and think this way about a topic. They want an easy answer to horrors like that in their life. And this movie just refuses to paint a fantasy picture that has that kind of answer. Because that's the real world we live in. There are no easy answers, and none of the answers are going to be happy anyway. So deal with it, guys. But
yeah, well, this film clearly is. I mean, see it for yourself. We definitely gave away a lot of spoilers for the after the movie discussion, but please check it out if you could handle the subject matter. Again, it's quite the subject of debate. Very difficult to watch, even on this was like my third viewing of this. Yeah, but this is available on Prime. If you have Prime Video, it's included. So check it out. If you dare. But
if you dare. But
really fantastic.
Today is a much happier topic.
Yeah, that was
in some ways.
This little ray of sunshine, Jeanette MacDonald. So Jeanette MacDonald was obviously an actress, singer, known for her incredible operatic soprano voice. She was born June 18th, 1903. She eventually was, when she was around 19, she was in New York, and she got involved in Broadway, kind of worked her way up as far as being the star. Like she was kind of always like the second highest lead for a few years. Finally got her chance. She had been invited to screen test in Hollywood. This is kind of, at this point, it was around the time when movies were transitioning to sound, with meaning like, oh, we could have actual singers in this musical.
Yeah.
Musical was of course, a budding medium at that point. But her agent on Broadway was like, now, like, we're going to keep her here. And it wasn't until a little bit later when Ernst Lubitsch, the director of today's film, he was looking through some old screen, at that point, old, maybe they're like a year old. He was looking through some screen tests and saw her and was like, well, I need her. So let's get her out to Hollywood. Yeah, so she came out and she did a lot of films starting with Paramount. A whole bunch of things. She eventually went over to United Artists. She wanted to produce her own films. And then she was with Fox. Fox was not really considered to be one of the top tier studios at the time. Then she was with MGM. She was often paired with Maurice Chevalier, who will be the co-star of today's film, and Nelson Eddy is another singer and actor that she was paired with a lot, and we'll go more into all of that.
Yes, there's quite a story there.
There is, but her film career was really popular in like the 1930s and 40s. Of course, during all of this, she also was still an active singer, and she was touring a lot. She performed a lot for, like in World War II, she was performing for soldiers and things like that. She has 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, one for acting and one for her recording artistry. She had a lot of health problems. She had an ongoing heart issue starting, even mentioned like in her 20s. They think that she had a heart attack. And ultimately that is what she only lived to be 61. And that is what she died from. She had heart failure. And that led to like, she had a lot of other health issues because of that. Like she never had a baby to term, even though she was pregnant many, many times. And not just by her husband, which we'll get into that. So she was married. She was married to a guy who was an actor in his own right. And when I was reading about her, she really sounded like she was just like so incredibly devoted to him. And, he was an actor, and she almost like felt guilty of like, my career is so much better than his. And that was one reason why she kind of backed out of being in films for a while, because she just like felt bad. She felt like he deserved to be more of a star, and he was with her, holding her hand when actually he was massaging her feet, I read, when she died, like in the hospital, saying like, I love you and stuff. So you're like, oh, they had this wonderful, long marriage and stuff. But then you read about her and this Nelson Eddy guy.
Well, yeah, so there's a lot going on there. So her career really started because of her voice in films, because Ernst Lubitsch really was responsible for creating what we know as the movie musical and sort of freeing it from these sort of backstage dramas. That's what seemed like most musicals had, this backstage, like, put on a show kind of thing. Yeah. And so Ernst Lubitsch's start to the genre on film was really the opposite of that. And he was sort of charmed by her voice, her vocal styling, this, like the operetta style vocals, were kind of going out of fashion a little bit, but now we had sound filmmaking. And so he really paired her and Maurice Chevalier together for the first time in one of these musicals. So she's part of this, like, basically the foundations of the movie musical. She's a part of that history. With I think the movie was called The Love Parade.
I think so.
It was the 1929, I think. It was the first movie that she did with Maurice Chevalier and Ernst Lubitsch. But so they sort of developed. Was
that Lubitsch's first sound film?
I think so, yes. Yeah. And then they ended up doing 3 more musicals together, the last of which is the movie we chose for today. One of those movies was actually directed by Ruben Mamoulian, another great 30s director who did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Miriam Hopkins and Frederick March, So like that's another great musical that has the 2 of them. And it really comes to a head in the one we're watching today. But it was on the during the recording sessions and costume fittings for The Merry Widow, where Nelson Eddy and her first met. Somehow he was that movie was like a huge production. They were kind of basically MGM wanted to outdo what Paramount was doing with that whole team, the Lubitsch, Chevalier, Lubitsch team. So they're like, here's even more money to come here and make a movie with us. And they're like, okay, well, we'll spend all your money. One of the most expensive movies ever made in Hollywood at the time.
Well, also, didn't they filmed 2 versions of it
They
at the same
did. They
time.
filmed.
You'll see there's a Merry Widow 1934 and 1935. It's like they were simultaneously filming like a French version of it.
They did that. They actually there's a reason another movie that Jeanette MacDonald was in later. I forget the name of it now. Like I think it was called Mayfair or something like that. But that movie was filmed in like color, I think, at the beginning, and it was being filmed in another language. And then they ended up scrapping all the footage and starting over. That seemed to happen with a bunch of movies. They seemed to film movies in different languages at the same time. So like the original Dracula, for instance, there's a Spanish language film of Dracula that was filmed at the same time as the Hollywood English language version. So they did that quite frequently. But it was on the recording sessions and costuming of this movie where Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald first met. And if they had not come to MGM, who knows if she would have met him in that circumstance, because that was like a lifelong torrid love affair where they made 8 movies together. And those movies are like a record of what was going on in the way that they interact with each other in the films is thought to be reflective of what's going on in their secret relationship, because she apparently got pregnant from Nelson Eddy before they had not been married yet. Nelson Eddy wanted her to basically give up her career because he didn't want to have both people in the relationship be in filmmaking careers. And she basically said, no, I'm success and this is what I want to do with my life. I'm not going to stop doing that for you. And so they had this on again, off again, torrid, tempestuous love affair for years. And you can see in the movies they made, okay, they've made up by this point because their chemistry is back. And there's other scenes where it's supposed to be romantic and you're kind of like, they're doing both singing very well, but you can tell that there's something a little bit off. And it's like, oh, well, that's because something really was off with them. So like, ironically, they were, because she got pregnant before they were married, Louis B. Mayer already didn't like Nelson Eddy. He already hated him and basically didn't want Nelson Eddy to have anything that he wanted in life. And he really wanted to control Jeanette MacDonald's career. So he told her like, okay, well, you can't marry this person now. You can't marry them. We can't be seen together. And they basically forced her into a marriage in a way to this gay actor.
Yeah, he was having affairs.
She then was a beard for. And so, but she did, want to support him and love him, make sure she didn't treat him like a bad person. It wasn't like their marriage was unhappy because she was unhappy with him. It was like she basically carried on her relationship in secret with Nelson Eddy for years, to the point that everybody knew it. And when she was offered book deals at the end of her life, they were like, well, we want you to tell us everything about this relationship. And she was like, I am telling you nothing, but I have a whole other life that I can tell you about. And they're like, well, we don't want that. And she's like, well, I'm going to write the book anyways. And nobody would publish it because she wouldn't dish on her relationship with Nelson Eddy. Yeah. And it's like, it's a legend in Hollywood. So it's like very fateful moment when she met him. And it happens to have been on this film, which I think is her best movie, her best role of everything she did. But it was at this time when this movie was made, was when she fatefully met.
Yeah, and there were all kinds. I mean, with her actual husband, I had read something too where supposedly he had been abusive to her, and Nelson Eddy, I think, had like even they had like some sort of physical altercation.
I had heard that too. I don't know if it's verified or not, but
yeah. And also, I know her husband, I don't think he was capable of having children, but she, what I read was she had been pregnant with Nelson Eddy's children 8 times. And miscarried every time because of her own health issues, which is
the first time she actually fell while filming. She was going upstairs as part of a scene and she fell on her stomach and slid down a few steps. And then they're like, oh my God, are you okay? Because, the bad time they knew she was pregnant. She was obviously pregnant, but not so much so that she couldn't work.
Yeah. Oh,
and
crazy.
They knew. So she's like, no, I'm fine. She got up and finished the scene like nothing had happened. And it wasn't until later that she started feeling pains and stuff, and she miscarried. And then she was never able to have a baby after that. It was so sad that she had to live that love affair in secret.
Yeah, and they would do things like they exchange vows with each other. I mean, they were never legally married or anything, but I guess Nelson Eddy would just like refer to her as, his wife. Apparently, they would go back, like they had like a wedding anniversary, and they would go back and to where they had exchanged vows with each other and have and like do it again, have like another vow exchange. Yeah, so really, really interesting. That certainly isn't all of her career. We're always
No,
just,
no. Her
we're
films,
always
like
curious
on,
in this part too, but
she looks great in these early 30s musicals on screen. She's just like, you could tell there's like this sassy, sexually vigorous human being there who's also got this amazing singing voice with a really high range. Of course, the problem with sopranos is that it's really, really difficult to understand anything a soprano is singing. It's very difficult to make out the words. So in the first aria of The Merry Widow, I actually finally found the lyrics to that aria. It's only a portion of it that she sings in the movie. They make a whole scene out of it, but it's only a part of the actual full song in reality. But the part that they use, they made a whole number out of, kind of. But it's really hard to tell what she's saying. And I found the lyrics because in The Merry Widow is based on a Franz Lehár operetta from turn of the 20th century. So like 1903, 1904, ironically around the time Jeanette MacDonald was born. But it was an instant hit. It was a huge, huge hit as an operetta. Like the music is very, bouncy, jaunty. Like the story is very funny. It really is like one of the best operettas you'll ever see. If it ever is playing at any theater, if you ever see your local opera anywhere is doing a production of The Merry Widow, go see that live operetta because it is genuinely one of the funniest and most delightful things you'll ever see on a stage. And of course, perfect material for Ernst Lubitsch to take and make this amazing film of that. Frankly, every production of The Merry Widow on stage since this movie came out has all been hearkening back to this film's adaptation of the material. But those lyrics, which of course are originally in German, because the German title is Die lustige Witwe, but they all had to be translated. So Lawrence Hart of Rodgers and Hart, who wrote, is famous in American Broadway musical theater, like very famous writer and musician and composer, he did all these lyrics for this English adaptation of the movie. So they are not direct translations of the actual text. They're like new versions based on that text in English. So there's that confusion. So it was very hard to find the lyrics to that aria because you have to basically buy complete works of Lawrence Hart to find the lyrics he did for The Merry Widow, because there's no individual publication of all of these lyrics that he did for this film. But this is like one of the most perfect movies I've ever seen. She is at her absolute height in this movie. She's like, like I said, like the sexuality, the sauciness, the sassiness, the singing voice. Also, just she gets to do a lot of dramatic range in this role because the role itself is someone who basically gets her heart broken a couple times, it seems, by the same person in this story before everything kind of works out. But like she plays it so honestly, and like it's just like it just comes from the heart with her when she's on screen. And so usually after this, you could see how studios were kind of like, oh, well, this works and this works, so we're going to amp this up and we're going to have her do more of this and less of this. And you could see them trying to work out what they wanted to do with her and editing her performance. This movie is like she's kind of given full free reign to be the performer she naturally is, and she is just like sparkling from beginning to end, and just a complete joy to watch and listen to. With the movie as a whole, from beginning to end, is also just so perfectly crafted. Like it's very rare when you see a movie where every joke lands visually or written. It's perfectly placed. Everything is perfectly paced, so nothing is rushed or anything like at the wrong time. It's kind of like one of those movies that you're trying to find the formula. Where's the code? How did he put this together to make this thing that's so perfect? And really, it kind of hinges on her performance and her chemistry with Maurice Chevalier. But all of the side characters listed here are hilarious. Like I said, not a bum performance in the whole movie. there will be a couple numbers that you'll be tempted to put your subtitles on because of the soprano voice. But I'll post a picture on our Instagram of,
Okay.
I'll post an image that has the lyrics of her first aria. And that scene is so beautiful, so beautifully filmed that I really don't want anyone to have to put on subtitles and not be able to just look at it and listen to it, because it's a really stunningly beautiful scene. Just like visually, plus like there's the extra little touch of specialness that's added to everything. Like the sets in this movie, I think, did win an Oscar.
It was nominated. Oh, actually, it did win Best Art Direction.
Yes, and when you see the movie, you'll understand why it won Best Art Direction. Because there's so many elements. Just watch it and really pay attention to all the details. Because I've seen it many times, so every time I watch it, I get to notice a little bit more of like, oh, like the shape of this balcony, the shape of these arches, the size of this room, like gargantuan.
Again, yeah. One final thing I'll say about her singing that I also read is that I'm assuming with this too, but for all of her films, her musical films, she's actually singing while she's filming. Like what you hear is the pre-recorded thing that she is lip syncing to, but she actually wasn't lip syncing. She was singing while she was actually on set, and apparently it was really loud. Like some of the sound guys were like, I think they had to wear earplugs.
The orchestra was just off on the soundstage, just off camera, which was the same in this movie, The Merry Widow. Like there are moments in this movie where just I've watched it with multiple different people, and no matter when or where these people came from, everybody has the same reaction to this movie, which is just like you almost get to a point of delirium. I mentioned this with you and Andres yesterday when we were talking, that like there are moments where like he'll cut to an image, and the image itself and what's happening will instantly make you laugh out loud, and then it'll cut to another shot that's moving that is also visually just stunning, and it sort of carries this energy. It manages to carry this energy and hand it off from shot to shot to shot to shot to shot in a way that we're like, they never drop the ball. They're juggling all these things. They never drop anything. It's just like, it feels almost criminal for a movie to be this perfectly constructed and this entertaining. It will lift your spirits no matter when you watch it. I've literally watched this movie twice in a row as well, which I think you said you've done with Velvet Goldmine. I've done it with that movie, and I've done it with this movie, where like I watch it with a group and it was so much fun and we laughed so much through it that sometimes you missed a line here. I literally just started the movie again and just watched it all the way through because it was so much fun. And now again, I'm trying to figure out like where is the magic? How do you construct this Lubitsch touch?
Yeah, you're talking about how everything is, just so perfectly crafted. And for those who have been watching us since November, we did an Ernst Lubitsch Day, and the movie we picked for that is Trouble in Paradise, which is another one of your favorites, and one that you know, again, are like every line is just perfect in here. But a little bit about the plot of this, and this movie has been remade a few times. There's one in just the 40s with Lana Turner. When a small kingdom's main taxpayer leaves for Paris, its king dispatches a dashing count to win back her allegiance. That is the plot.
Yes, it's a pretty basic plot. The basically anytime there's music and anybody's singing, pay attention. But the grand piece of this movie that is especially highlight worthy would be the embassy ball sequence. I was talking to you that like that whole sequence kind of captures how music and emotion are tied together in a really brilliant way. But it's just visually, it's a stunning. Like the waltz is very passé. It's sort of like, a dying art even at this point. And a lot of the movie is sort of infused with this sort of poignancy about these lost arts and what's, sort of a farewell to old times, as Peter Bogdanovich called it, that there's a little bit of that underneath everything in the movie. So there's a poignancy to the film that grounds it. But otherwise it's such a light, effervescent movie. It just floats like the whole way through. There's nothing heavy or clunky anywhere in it. It's a very difficult balancing act to manage. I think Peter Bogdanovich, who, as we know, impeccable taste that's virtually unassailable by anyone, says that this musical, in terms of style and wit, has never been equaled. And it's just like there's an unpretentious charm and sparkle, as he puts it, about this movie that has been undimmed by time in critical fashion, as he said. It's a perfect way to say, and a perfect thing to say about this movie, because it really, like, no matter when you watch, like I said, I watched it with somebody who's 20 years old, like I think over the holiday season. We just wanted it, like, we watched Meet Me in St. Louis, and we wanted to watch another movie that was great, that had this kind of amazing energy. And I was like, oh, well, let's put this on. They'd never heard of any of this. And of course, it's not the kind of music that you usually can hook young people with in this film. It's, you know,
not trending on TikTok.
Somehow, like, it was like 1 a.m. We watched the whole film, and it was just like, we must have annoyed the neighbors, because we were just cackling like the whole time. And I was like, it was confirmation. I'm like, okay, this genuinely is a timeless classic, even if the music style itself may be kind of old, and the waltz may be kind of old. They find all the beauty of these art forms in this movie. And that waltz in the embassy ball sequence, that waltz that just grows and grows and grows, is just, it's another example of like, oh my God, that shot was great. Oh my God, like the music and the shot are giving me this elation, and it's building on that visually as your emotions kind of build with it. It's really wonderful. So I hope everybody else has as much fun with it as I always do.
So this, I think, is only available to rent. I tried looking on, I thought this had been on the TCM app, but it's not. I checked
twice. It may have been at one point.
Yeah, but it's not on there now, so I think this is only available to rent. I have never seen this. Looking forward to watching it.
It's only $1.99 to rent.
Yeah, it was, I think, on the Apple TV. I think it was cheaper on there than.
Yeah, it's $2 on the iTunes, and it was like $5 or $6 to buy. I think it was $5 for me to buy. And this was remastered by Warner Brothers. They actually had included this in their Warner archive back in the day, when you back in the day, like less 10 years ago. You could actually order. They would make a DVD of films in their archive. They added more and more films, and the films would be remastered and then transferred to a DVD, and you pay like $20. And they'd send it to you in a case. They just basically print out an image of the poster, and you could order this. And I didn't order this at that time. I had this on video years and years ago. And I actually had to replace the video because I watched it so many times, especially the first aria that Jeanette MacDonald sings in this movie, because it's really beautiful. And you get to hear how insane her range is. But also just the scene itself is so stunning. So I used to rewind it and watch that sequence over and over and over and over again, because I just could not believe that anybody put something this beautiful on the screen, that somebody had created this. It was mind-boggling that it was possible to make something that beautiful. And so I watched it over and over again. And then I never bought the DVD when Warner Archive remastered it. But they did make it available for you to rent and buy really, really cheaply if you just want it digitally. But I really hope that someday we get like a big, fabulous Criterion special edition of this movie, because it really, really deserves it. And it's another crime that this movie has just been buried since then. And people have not, that this movie is not more well known and not more watched and talked about, is a crime to me on the cinema side.
I don't think I've seen any film with Maurice Chevalier when he's younger.
Oh, yeah. This was the last.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have seen things from like the 50s and up that he's in. Like
you saw Gigi and you know.
Can, which is one that I've talked to Samir about. He's in that.
Well, there's some canning in this movie too, because they go to Maxime's in Paris, and he is like at the top of his game as well. He's so fucking funny. This is the quintessential like French lover character. Is his creation on screen, really, with Ernst Lubitsch. They really kind of created the film version of that stereotype, for better or for worse. But they're playing with that stereotype so knowingly, and it's so hilarious. He is just watch it and enjoy it. Like he's dogged in his determination to bed a woman, but it's never. This is before it sounded creepy when he's saying "Thank heaven for little girls" as an old man. This is when he was actually young and fun and vibrant, and You know, there's nothing creepy about his lustfulness. Somehow Ernst Lubitsch doesn't make him a creep. He just makes him fun and lively. That's also difficult to do because usually that kind of role comes off super creepy. But but yeah, you'll get to see Maurice Chevalier in his prime, his youthful prime, with Jeanette MacDonald, and they had great chemistry on screen.
Yeah, they were several things together.
You'll love seeing them dance together in this movie. It just like the camera at moments just dances with them. And you're just so swept up in this emotion that, you know, it adds to the magic of watching the movie. And the way she is, I can't wait for you to watch it because she's so funny in this movie. There's just moments where she's just so delightful. And then when she starts dancing to pull him out of his funk in one moment, it's just like, you want to get up and swing around the room with her too. And she just also costumes. These costumes by Jean-Louis that she wears are the best costumes she ever got to wear in a film. They're crazy and beautiful. Just wait till you see them. Wait till you see them.
Well, I'm excited. Again, this is available to rent. I'm definitely going to make some popcorn tonight and just cozy up and watch this film. Super excited.
Maybe pop a bottle of champagne if you have some.
I don't have any champagne left.
Well, get a good eggs order in or something.
I usually have it for like an occasion. I don't just keep champagne laying around my house.
That is a damn shame because this movie requires a nice. Maybe I'll walk down and get some Andre. I don't know.
Yeah, but check this out. Tomorrow we will be discussing it. And then tomorrow is Thursday, and we will be continuing our true crime documentary Thursdays that we're doing. Tomorrow's is our white collar pick, The Inventor. I just so it's The Inventor and then something. What's the rest of it called? I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it? It's about
Out for Blood in Silicon Valley. There we go.
Yes, about the Theranos scandal. It's man, if you haven't seen Elizabeth Holmes's face, just we'll get there. Until then, let's just enjoy the bubbly brilliance of The Merry Widow tonight.
Yeah, starting today and really the rest of the week. I haven't seen any of the other movies we have slated for this week. So watching new stuff every day. I'm always excited to learn new things. Yeah, and watch new films. Yeah, thank you guys. Please support us on our Patreon. If you hope you'll dress up tomorrow. I might whip out a black turtleneck.
I'm already dressed. What?
Jobs look. Yeah, but thank you guys for watching. Please consider supporting us on Patreon. I put the link in the comments. Join us tomorrow for our after the movie discussion of The Merry Widow, followed by our second installment of true crime documentaries. Oh, and wait, today's when the Nights is it out? I have to check.
Is the Night Stalker series premiering tonight?
Is it out?
We're gonna have the most weird night, Amy. We're gonna watch The Merry Widow and then watch a serial killer.
Out today. Wait, new releases. Yeah, The Night Stalker. Where is it?
Damn you.
It said it was coming out today. Maybe it is going to be an evening thing. We get really excited about our serial killer documentaries, guys.
We are a disturbed bunch.
Stalker.
But you said it was supposed to be the 13th, right? Or was it the 14th?
Maybe it's... Wait. Yes, it's out. Okay, The Night Stalker. It's called Night Stalker: The Hunt for a Serial Killer. That is also out. So, I mean, watch The Merry Widow. But then
we're just gonna add extra things for us to watch to get us, Yeah,
I'm definitely watching that over the next 2 days.
But you know what? Considering the amount of money that people usually have to spend to rent something, I encourage people to buy this movie. Just support it. Give them the $5. Tell Warner Brothers that, or whoever owns Warner Brothers now, I think it's Disney. Tell them we love this movie. And then because if you do like it and you want to own it, it's like, well, then you already bought it.
That is true. That is very true. All right, guys. Anyway, we've got a lot of things going on. Merry Widow, Night Stalker, Netflix series. Going into our we love our true crime documentaries, and
Yes, we do.
we do, but we'll give you guys updates on that. Thank you guys, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.
Okay.